I'm Natalie, and on Christmas morning, while everyone unwrapped luxury gifts, mine never came. Not a ribbon, not even a name tag. So I stood up, smiled, and said, "It's okay. I just bought myself a condo, paid in full. Ever had to prove your worth to the people who were supposed to know it all along? Drop your story in the comments. I'm listening." I was halfway through my second flat white of the morning when Jessica's name appeared on my phone screen. I blinked. It wasn't just surprising. It was disorienting, like seeing a ghost with perfect timing. Her name looked strange, sitting there among delivery updates, work emails, and a recipe Maya had sent for cranberry scones. We hadn't spoken in 8 years. The indie playlist in the cafe hummed in the background, and rain tapped softly against the windows. The barista was calling out someone's oat milk latte. I didn't move. I just stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, hesitant. Finally, I picked up. "Hey, Natalie." Jessica's voice was cautious, but familiar. "I know this is unexpected." It was. The last time I'd seen her was at Ryan's wedding. I'd stood alone by the gift table while everyone buzzed around the newlyweds. "I don't think anyone even noticed I was there." "Not really," Jessica continued. "Your mom and dad have been asking about you. They want you to come home for Christmas." For a moment, I didn't respond. A woman behind me laughed loudly. My eyes drifted to the rain outside, blurring the edges of downtown Portland like a watercolor. I took a breath. "Why now?" I asked. They didn't say much, just said they've been thinking about you, wanted to see you again. She paused. "I think they mean it, Nat." But I wasn't sure I cared whether they meant it. The people who hadn't spoken to me in nearly a decade, the ones who told me to find my own path without ever offering a map, suddenly remembered I existed. "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up before she could reply. Back at my condo that evening, I curled up in my reading chair, a blanket over my legs, my laptop warming my thighs. Maya and Lisa were on video chat, both wearing face masks and sipping chamomile tea, like we were in some kind of wellness ad. "So let me get this straight," Maya said, squinting into the camera. "They iced you out for years, and now they're extending a festive olive branch?" Lisa snorted. "Yeah, classic emotional boomerang. You got successful, and suddenly they're nostalgic." I gave a small laugh. "They said they wanted me home. For Christmas." Lisa shook her head. "For what? Guilt presents? Some sparkly earrings and a fruitcake to make up for your entire 20s? "Maybe," I said, voice quieter than I meant. I turned my camera toward the rain against my window. "I don't know what they're really after." Neither of them said anything for a beat. Then Maya leaned closer to the screen, her tone softer. "Are you thinking about going?" I didn't answer right away. I was thinking about college graduation, how Mom had handed me a cheap leather planner and said, "Time to make your own way." Ryan, meanwhile, got a car, a summer trip to Europe, and a savings account to help him get started. I was thinking about how I spent my first Christmas away from home eating instant ramen in my dorm, pretending finals weren't already over. "I've built a life here," I finally said. "I have a good job, real friends, a place that feels like mine. Why walk into a place that used to make me feel invisible?" "Because maybe," Maya said gently, "this time you won't shrink." I didn't answer. Later that night, I sat cross-legged on the rug with them, surrounded by pizza boxes and half-drunk kombucha bottles. My place smelled like eucalyptus and oven heat. Lisa raised her glass of red wine and grinned. "To facing ghosts," she said. I lifted my mug and clinked it against hers, the ceramic tapping faintly. "To ghosts," I echoed, unsure if I was summoning them or finally laying them to rest. The next morning, I booked a ticket to Boise. It was strange, really, how quickly muscle memory returned, how easily I clicked through flights and car rentals like I was preparing for a business trip. But this wasn't business. This was history, unresolved and unfinished. As I packed, I pulled out a shoebox tucked behind old tax folders in my closet. Inside were loose photographs, most of them curled at the edges. One caught my eye, a faded snapshot from middle school. Me, in oversized glasses, half smiling. standing next to Ryan on the front steps of the old house. He was front and center, grinning ear to ear. I was slightly off to the side, partially cropped. That photo had never made it onto my walls. It didn't belong in this home I'd created from scratch, with its framed landscapes and travel postcards and Polaroids of people who saw me. But now, for reasons I couldn't explain, I tucked it into the side pocket of my duffel bag. Maybe I just wanted to see if anything at all had changed. The snow had settled in thick patches across the roof, giving the Reed family house the look of something trying too hard to be festive. A giant wreath hung crookedly over the front door, blinking red and green like it was apologizing for being late to the party. The porch creaked as I stepped onto it, my boot brushing against a cracked ceramic gnome. It looked smaller, not just in size, but in presence, like it had spent the last decade holding its breath, and now, with my return, had finally exhaled. I stood there a moment longer than necessary, luggage in one hand, the other tucked deep in my coat pocket, fingers curling around the photo I had brought. The door opened before I could knock. "Wow," Sharon said, blinking. "It's really you." She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me for a quick, one-armed hug, just enough to register, not enough to feel. "You look different," she added, scanning me with a tilted head. "Portland suits you." "I suppose it does," I replied. Inside, the warmth felt artificial, like it had been turned up last minute for effect. Cinnamon-scented candles lined the mantel. The same beige walls I remembered were now adorned with framed holiday prints and decorative sayings like "Family is everything" and "Gather with grateful hearts." "Your father's in the kitchen," Sharon said, gesturing with her head. "Ryan and Mia should be back soon from her checkup." Paul greeted me with a nod and a quiet, "Glad you made it in one piece," before returning to chopping sweet potatoes. I watched his hands for a second, steady, unhurried, detached. Dinner was set for 6, plus a few extra chairs that made the dining room feel tighter than it was. Relatives filtered in, their voices loud and cheerful, their words rehearsed. My cousin Colleen commented on my coat. My Uncle Jim asked, "Still into that tech stuff?" and didn't wait for an answer before complimenting the ham. Ryan arrived just in time to make an entrance. He swept into the room like it was a stage, cheeks flushed from the cold, Mia trailing politely behind him, one hand resting lightly on her small belly. "Look who decided to come home," he said, arms wide, like I should applaud his line delivery. I nodded. "Hey, Ryan." Mia offered a soft smile. "It's good to see you, Natalie." "Likewise," I said. It wasn't untrue. Dinner played out like a script they'd been rehearsing without me. Sharon passed around dishes, while Paul refilled glasses. Ryan launched into a monologue about a disruptive wellness app he was building with some college buddies. "It's going to revolutionize self-care," he said, slicing into his roast like it was part of the pitch. "We're in the early stages, but once funding comes through, we're looking at serious traction." The table nodded in unison, like metronomes of polite encouragement. I glanced down at my plate and quietly chewed. After dessert, a store-bought pecan pie passed off as Mia's favorite. I stood and began stacking plates. Sharon waved a hand. "Relax, sweetheart. You're our guest." "Happy to help," I replied, reaching for the gravy boat. No, she insisted. "We've got it." The way she said "we" excluded me, whether she meant it or not. I wandered through the living room, noting the changes. The sofa had been replaced. The coffee table was new. But one thing hadn't changed. The photo shelf along the wall. My eyes scanned each frame. Ryan's graduation. Ryan's wedding. Ryan and Mia's baby announcement, held in a tiny pair of socks. And then, off to the side, half obscured by a holiday candle, was a photo of me, barely recognizable. My face was caught mid-blink, and the frame was slightly cracked. My mug was gone from the kitchen cabinet too. The blue one, with a tiny chip in the handle I used every morning growing up. I checked without meaning to, hands moving on their own. I opened the guest linen closet for a towel and found boxes stacked high, labeled Taxes 2018 to 2022, Holiday Decor, and Ryan's Tech Gear. "You'll be on the couch, by the way," Sharon called from the hallway. "Ryan's using your old room as his office now. Lots of coding these days." "Sure," I replied. I didn't bother asking why Mia's office wasn't the nursery. Later that night, I lay on the living room couch with a folded blanket that smelled like mothballs and fabric softener. The lights from the tree blinked across the ceiling in patterns I couldn't decipher. The couch was shorter than I remembered, or maybe I was taller now. From the dining room, I could hear my relatives cleaning up, the clink of plates and low conversation. "She's still into that computer stuff, huh?" a voice said. "Aunt Ruth," I guessed. "She always was the weird one," someone else replied, laughter following like a punchline. I stared at the ceiling. "You chose to come," I reminded myself. "Now choose how to stay." It was a quiet thought, almost gentle. Not a challenge, but a reminder. Being here was my decision. Whatever came next, I could decide what to carry and what to leave behind. Christmas morning arrived, under a blanket of fresh snow and practiced smiles. The living room smelled like cinnamon sugar coffee cake and reheated eggnog, with pine-scented candles flickering near the fireplace. A fire crackled steadily, casting golden light on the chaotic scene unfolding around the tree. The gift pile was impressive. Boxes of all shapes and sizes towered under the tree, adorned with glossy red and gold wrapping, velvet bows, and oversized name tags that sparkled in the light. Someone had taken the time to arrange them like a display in a department store window. But amid the bounty, my eyes were drawn to a quiet gap, just left of center, near the fireplace. An oddly empty space where a gift could have, should have been. I wrapped my hands tighter around a plain ceramic mug. I had made my own tea since no one had asked what I drank. Everyone else lounged in matching flannel pajamas with snowflake patterns or fleece robes with embroidered initials. I had stayed in my black jeans and a soft cashmere sweater, warm but understated. Nothing loud, nothing begging to be seen. Sharon clapped her hands together. "Okay, everyone, let's make a circle and start with the little ones." Kids squealed in delight, diving for presents and tearing through wrapping paper like it was their job. Toys shrieked to life. Ribbons curled across the floor. I smiled softly at their joy, even as something small twisted inside me. I had come prepared. My gifts were neatly wrapped in brown craft paper, tied with striped twine, and finished with hand-lettered tags. For Mia, I had picked a cookbook with simple, hearty recipes and a set of engraved wooden spoons. For Paul, a sleek, pour-over coffee kit from a Portland cafe and a tin of their boldest roast. For Sharon, delicate embroidered tea towels with a pattern I'd noticed in her kitchen during my last visit years ago. I had included a card with each, written by hand, carefully considered. Mia opened hers first. "Oh, wow," she said, her voice soft, eyes scanning the recipe book. "This is really thoughtful." Paul lifted the tin. "Great roast," he said. "You always pick good stuff, Natalie." Sharon read my card quickly, then tucked it into the cover of the towels. "Lovely," she murmured, setting the bundle on the table beside her. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. And then, the pile under the tree moved on without me. One by one, gifts were handed out. Spa vouchers, silk sleep masks, robes with gold initials, monogrammed duffels. Mia received a pregnancy relaxation kit. Ryan got a smartwatch with custom features. Even the cousins had sets of artisanal jams and matching mugs. Then, Sharon picked up a small square box and squinted at the label. "Oh, this is Natalie," she said, holding it up. "But wait, no, this one's for Mia. That must have been a mistake. Sorry, Nat." She handed it over with a chuckle. Mia looked briefly uncomfortable, then shrugged and accepted the box. Ryan laughed, leaning back in his chair. "Classic nation, Always forgotten. A few chuckles followed. My face didn't move. I let the silence sit in my chest, like cold water. I looked again at the quiet gap beneath the tree. Not the mislabeled box or the missing tag. The space itself. That tiny, empty shape that echoed every holiday I had spent waiting for something with my name on it. Every time I had prayed, as a kid, for someone to hold up a box and say, "This one's for Natalie," and how rarely they had. I set my mug down on the windowsill and reached into my pocket. The brushed steel of the keychain was cool in my palm. It was simple, clean, just a charm shaped like a house. No engraving, no flash. I stepped forward and held it up so they could see. "I didn't forget myself," I said. Voice calm. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. Paper stopped rustling. "I closed on a condo in Portland last week. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, south-facing windows. Paid in full." Paul blinked. "Paid in full?" he echoed. I nodded. "With the bonus from my last project. It was a security integration for an international client. My team led the implementation." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "What kind of bonus are we talking about?" I shrugged lightly. "Let's just say my computer stuff has done all right." A beat passed, then another. Sharon pressed her hands together. "Well, that's wonderful, sweetheart. Truly." Paul looked at me, eyes narrowed slightly. Not in disapproval, just in calculation. Good timing, too. Real estate's tough these days. Ryan glanced at Mia, who gave him a quick, tight smile. He tapped his smartwatch and looked away. I turned back to the tree and gently placed the keychain in that open spot, right there in the quiet space, where something meant for me should have gone. Let them keep their candles and robes and monogrammed mugs. I didn't come back for gifts. I came back to remember who I wasn't anymore. And I had. Someone behind me cleared their throat. Sharon asked if anyone wanted more coffee cake. A cousin handed a toddler a plush toy. The room kept moving. But something in me had gone still. In the best way. "You know, Natalie," Ryan said, using the back of his fork to swirl the leftover gravy into a lazy circle on his plate. "I think your success could be a real blessing for all of us." The words floated across the candlelit table like steam off the mashed potatoes. Warm, vague, and heavy with implication. My fork paused midair. I glanced around. Everyone else had gone still in that careful, waiting kind of way. When people are trying to look casual, but are really listening for the answer they want. "Is that so?" I said, setting my fork down gently. Ryan smiled, like he'd just opened a meeting he had every intention of leading. "Yeah, you've done well. I mean, really well. And I've been thinking, maybe there's a way we could turn that momentum into something bigger. Something that benefits the whole family." Sharon jumped in like she'd been holding her breath. "Ryan's been working on this wonderful new idea. An app. Wellness and self-care, right?" "It's more than that," Ryan said, clearly ready with his pitch. "It's a lifestyle platform. Personalized routines, mindfulness modules, meal plans tailored to DNA. Cutting-edge tech meets everyday health. We're calling it Mind Nest." Mia, seated beside him, rubbed her belly in a practiced motion. "We're building something for the future, especially now. A product with purpose." Paul nodded slowly. "And Ryan's been talking to some very smart people about it. But to get started, really started, they need a little capital." I didn't say anything. I sipped my wine, keeping my face neutral. Ryan took that as interest. "Right now, we're at the ground floor. We've got the wireframes, the domain name, and a dev team ready if we can fund them. But we don't want to bring in strangers. Not at this stage. It should be someone who believes in us." Sharon placed her hand on the table near mine, not quite touching. "Sweetheart, with the kind of bonus you earned, this would be a small thing. For you. But a huge help for them." Paul added, "It's seed money, Nat. Just to help them lift off. And you'd get equity." Mia looked at me, soft smile in place. "We thought maybe you'd want to be a part of something that's about growth." About family. I set the wine glass down. How much? Ryan beamed. $200,000. That's it. That gets us our MVP, some early buzz, and a small PR push. I've got a buddy at a podcast network who can run a segment. You'd be in at the ground floor. I didn't respond right away, because the memory came first. Of high school afternoons where Ryan borrowed my homework and never returned the favor. Of late-night arguments about noise when I had to be up at 5 a.m. for my shift, and he wanted the TV loud. On graduation day, Sharon bought Ryan a watch and gave me a card that said, "Keep reaching for the stars." "I see," I finally said. Sharon smiled like the sale was closed. And then I said, "No." The room froze. Even the fireplace popped at just the right moment, like punctuation. Ryan blinked. "No?" I leaned back in my chair. "That's right." Sharon's voice was too bright. "Natalie, sweetheart, don't be hasty. This is a great opportunity." I cut in, not sharp, but steady. Where was all this belief in me when I was applying for colleges and asked for help with tuition? Paul opened his mouth, closed it. Where was it when I moved out at 18, with 2 suitcases and no bed? When I worked 2 jobs and coded all night? When I called home once and was told, "Figure it out, you're smart"? Mia looked down at her plate. Ryan crossed his arms. "I built my life. I didn't inherit it. I didn't marry into it. And I didn't get applause along the way. I got silence, sometimes pity, sometimes jokes." "Now hang on," Paul said, half standing in his seat. "We've always been proud of you." "You've been proud of the results," I said. "Not of me. Not when it counted." Ryan leaned back. "So you're punishing us for the past?" "I'm protecting myself in the present." Sharon's smile disappeared entirely. "You don't mean that. You're just upset." I folded my napkin, slowly, precisely. "I do mean it, and I'm not upset. I'm done pretending this family is something it's not. You want money, not connection." No one spoke. I stood. The hem of my sweater brushed the edge of the chair as I pushed it back. "I didn't come here to be your ATM." Ryan scoffed. "Wow. Okay." I turned to him. "My nest won't work. Not because the idea is bad, but because you think people owe you something just for having a vision." His jaw tightened. "This is why no one wants to work with you." "This is why I don't need anyone to," I replied. I walked toward the kitchen. My footsteps on the hardwood sounded louder than they should have. In the hall, I paused at the old mirror that had always hung crooked over the console table. I straightened it out of habit. My face looked calm, not triumphant, not wounded, just clear. Behind me, I heard Sharon whisper something. Maybe to Paul, maybe to herself. I didn't care enough to listen. I cared that I meant every word. The morning after Christmas, I woke to the buzz of my phone. Not the usual calendar alert or gentle chime from a meditation app, but message after message. Notifications piling on top of each other like fresh snow outside my window. I rubbed my eyes and checked the screen. 7 texts, 2 missed calls. All from cousins I hadn't seen in years. One read, "Heard you refuse to help your own brother." Yikes. Another, "Don't you think family matters more than grudges?" Jessica's name flashed next. Her message was more tentative. "Hey, just so you know, your mom is saying Ryan's really sick. That you walked out." I sat up slowly, heart pounding, not from panic, but from disbelief. Because of course they'd twist the story, turn my boundaries into betrayal. They always had. Downstairs I heard dishes clinking, low murmurs, a drawer opening, then closing. Someone cleared their throat. The smell of leftover ham and cinnamon coffee cake floated up through the vents. My stomach turned. I got out of bed. Well, off the couch, and began folding my blanket. I packed deliberately, carefully, folding each shirt and tucking them into my suitcase, with more gentleness than I had ever been offered in this house. Through the thin walls, I could make out snippets of conversation. Paul, "She's not even trying to understand." Sharon, "She's turning this into a punishment." like she's been waiting for years to humiliate us. I zipped up my bag, pulled on my boots, a soft knock at the door. "Natalie?" It was Sharon. Her voice was coated in strained sweetness. I opened the door partway. She stood there in her bathrobe, clutching a mug. "We should talk. You're making this all about the past." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't bring up the past. You all did, by acting like it never happened." She stepped back slightly, but her smile held. "We just want to move forward. You don't have to punish everyone." I stared at her, searching her face for even a flicker of remorse. I found none. "I'm not punishing anyone," I said calmly. "I'm choosing peace." Paul appeared behind her, adjusting his glasses. "Can't you at least talk to Ryan before you go?" I laughed, short and dry. "Why? So he can pitch the app again? Or tell me I'm overreacting?" "Natalie." I lifted my coat from the armrest. "Tell him I wish him well. And I mean that." Sharon looked at me like I had spoken a foreign language. I walked past them, dragging my suitcase behind me, the wheels thudding gently on the hardwood floor. No one followed me to the door. I opened it myself. Outside, the sky was a pale gray, snow drifting slowly, like someone had turned the volume down on the world. I breathed in the cold. It didn't sting. It cleared. Before stepping into the car, I sent Jessica a quick message. "Thanks for the heads up. Don't worry. I'm fine." She replied instantly. "I'm sorry for what they're saying." I didn't know what else to do. "You don't owe me an explanation," I typed. "Thanks for being decent." I started the car. The heat kicked in with a low hum. Somewhere between Boise and Portland, I pulled into a rest stop. I stared out at the rows of snow-covered picnic benches and vending machines humming quietly under gray skies. I pulled out my phone and dialed. "Hey," Ethan answered. His voice was steady, low, familiar. "I need to come home," I said. The words came out so easily. "You already are," he replied. I smiled, eyes stinging for the first time all morning. Back in Portland, the apartment smelled like eucalyptus and lemon cleaner. Maya and Lisa had left a bag of Thai takeout on the table with sticky notes. "Red curry for your soul. Dumplings because you survived. Love you." They showed up later with wine and fuzzy socks and a hug that lasted a full minute. I didn't cry, exactly, but I did let go. We sat on the couch under blankets, passing spring rolls back and forth. The lights dimmed low. Lisa made a joke about Ryan launching Mind Nest on MySpace. Maya snorted into her wine. My phone buzzed again. Another cousin. A voicemail. An unknown number. A new guilt trip waiting. I opened my contacts and scrolled. Block, block, block. Each tap was a small release. A string cut. A weight lifted. I looked out at the city, glowing in winter stillness. I thought about who I was in that house, who they expected me to be, and who I had become in spite of it. "They lost access to me," I said softly. "The day they denied my worth." Maya squeezed my shoulder. "Damn right." Later that night, in bed, the room warm and quiet, I reached for my phone one last time to set my alarm. Jessica had texted again. "Your mom is telling people Ryan's sick, and that you refuse to help." I stared at the screen. For a moment, I didn't move. Then I turned the phone face down on the nightstand and let the silence settle like a blanket. It had never felt so peaceful. 6 months later, I barely recognized the woman smiling back at me in the mirror. And I mean that in the best way. She stood a little taller. Her shoulders no longer curled inward like they once did. There was a softness in her face, not from age or fatigue, but from peace, a kind of glow that only comes when the weight of old expectations has finally been set down. The windows in my Portland condo were wide open, letting in the scent of blooming hydrangeas and freshly cut grass. Summer had arrived gently, with golden light pouring through the curtains and soft jazz humming from the corner speaker. A vase of bright peonies sat on the dining table, their petals open and unapologetically loud, like joy with nothing to prove. In the kitchen, the coffee brewed while the granola toasted in the oven. Lisa's recipe, Ethan's measuring spoons, my Sunday tradition. My life had become a mosaic of small rituals that made sense only because they were mine. I'd been promoted to head of systems architecture in May. The announcement came in a quiet meeting where my boss simply said, "You've earned it." My team brought cupcakes and boxed wine later that afternoon, and someone made a hand-drawn banner that read, "Queen of Code." I laughed until my stomach hurt. Then, I saved the banner and pinned it on the wall behind my desk. Work felt different now, not because the projects were easier, but because I felt anchored in my own worth. I no longer chased validation. I designed systems, led meetings, solved problems. And when I logged off, I did so without guilt. Ethan had suggested a hiking trip the week I got promoted. He picked the trail, packed snacks, and surprised me at the summit with a folded note that read, "Let's talk about buying a house." I laughed when I read it. Then I cried, just a little. "A house?" I'd asked between bites of trail mix. "Something with a yard," he said. "Maybe space for a dog. A real table for dinner. Someplace we choose together." The thought of building something new, something separate from everything I'd walked away from, felt more thrilling than any promotion. That weekend, I wrote a blog post. Nothing long, just a quiet offering to the digital void. If you've ever been the odd one out at your own kitchen table, I see you. If you've ever had to shrink so others could feel tall, I see you. And if you finally stopped shrinking, if you dared to choose peace over proximity, I am proud of you. I hit publish and closed the laptop. Within hours, strangers were resharing it, quoting lines I hadn't realized would resonate. One message simply said, "Thank you for saying it out loud." I didn't write back, but I smiled for a long time after. Later that night, I hosted dinner on my small balcony. Maya and Lisa brought their usual energy. Lisa with lemon bars from the Co-op bakery. Maya with a Bluetooth speaker and a playlist titled Sisters Who Slay. Ethan handled the grill like a pro, flipping veggie skewers and humming to himself between bursts of laughter. The table was a mosaic of secondhand finds. Blue ceramic plates that didn't match, wine glasses from estate sales, a mismatched set of linen napkins I'd found at a flea market. We ate by candlelight, legs tucked under us, shoulders brushing. After dinner, Maya raised her glass. "To Natalie," she said, "who finally chose herself, who turned down noise and picked peace, who made a life worth coming home to." "To Natalie," they echoed. I blinked once, then twice, not because I was fighting tears, but because I was full in a way I hadn't known I was hungry for. I looked around the table, at Lisa teasing Ethan about overcooked mushrooms, at Maya tapping her fork to the rhythm of the jazz still floating from inside, at Ethan watching me with that patient, steady smile. And I thought, this is family, not because we shared blood, but because we shared space, respect, a softness that never asked me to prove my value first. My phone buzzed on the countertop just as I stood to refill the wine. Unknown number, no preview, no name, just that familiar vibration of old ghosts trying to knock again. I stared at it for a breath, then smiled, picked it up, and set it back down, face down this time. "Not answering," I said quietly. "Not anymore." The wind shifted the candles slightly. The laughter from outside curled into the room like a promise. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt whole. Sometimes, walking away isn't about bitterness. It's about finally choosing stillness over noise. In that quiet space, I found not only peace, but a version of myself I had waited years to meet. Family isn't always who raised you. Sometimes, it's who listens, who shows up, and who lets you breathe without asking you to shrink. If we learn to honor our own worth, we make room for others to do the same. If this story reminded you of your own path, where you stayed strong or finally let go, I'd be honored to hear it. After all, sharing helps us remember we're not alone in choosing better.